Does Charles Leclerc really need to say something to shake up Ferrari? What if his performance in practice at the Mexican GP was his most powerful statement yet, leaving Vasseur speechless, and his own teammate Lewis Hamilton? Ferrari landed in Mexico City with a mix of enthusiasm, internal pressure, and rising expectations. They were coming off a weekend in Austin that dramatically changed the narrative for the Scuderia. After several races mired in frustration and amid rumors about the continuity of Frédéric Vasseur, Charles Leclerc's podium in the United States was not only a positive result, it was a necessary respite. Leclerc had broken a dry spell, Hamilton had finished just behind, and it seemed that the team had finally found a solid technical starting point. The key, a better understanding of SF25 and in particular the thermal behavior of tires. An improvement that was not accidental, but the result of a surgical analysis of telemetry data, configurations, and behavior on the track during the Texan weekend. What happened in the first free practice session of the Mexican Grand Prix was not simply a fast lap. It was a resounding statement of authority. Leclerc, in the middle of an atypical session in which 9 of the 10 teams put rookie drivers behind the wheel, found himself with a golden opportunity to be one of the few starters on the track. Instead of seeing that situation as a processing session, he transformed it into a platform to leave a message. He clocked a time of 1 minute and 18.380 seconds. Not only was he the fastest, he was the cleanest, the most precise, the one who best read the limited grip of a newly opened, dirty and slippery track. A surface where every mistake is paid for with understeer, skidding or loss of time. Leclerc made no mistakes. While most of the rookies and quite a few starters struggled to understand the behavior of their cars in these very particular conditions, the Monegasque seemed to operate with a secret map of the track. He took risks, but they were all calculated. And the most impressive thing is that he maintained a pace that did not depend on a single fast lap, but on a sequence of consistent sectors that evidenced total control over the SF25. What was interesting was not only the final time, but the way in which he constructed it. The sequence of sectors showed a car that was finally performing as it should, and more importantly, a driver who knew exactly how to extract performance from it. On a circuit like Hermanos Rodríguez, where medium and high-speed corners punish any aerodynamic imbalance, Leclerc managed to keep the car perfectly planted. The balance that Ferrari showed was the direct consequence of the adjustments made after Austin, especially in the brake-by-wire and the differential, but also of pinpoint driving. What made that lap so powerful was not the time, it was the context. That morning, Leclerc was the only driver in the top 5 of the championship who turned freely, without sharing the track with his teammate or without the pressure of immediate comparison. However, what he delivered was enough to make an overwhelming difference. Kimi Antonelli, the second fastest time, was 0.107 seconds behind. Nico Hülkenberg and Oscar Piastri, with more experience and competitive cars, were even further away. At the same time, Lewis Hamilton was outside the car, watching from the pit as Antonio Fuoco completed the Ferrari rookie program. Ferrari arrived in Mexico with a card up its sleeve, and it was neither a new piece of the SF25 nor a revolutionary aerodynamic evolution. It was knowledge. Specifically, knowledge about one of the most determining factors of performance in modern Formula One, tire thermal management. What many overlooked after the Austin GP was actually the most relevant technical turning point for the Scuderia so far this year. There, in the bowels of the post-race analysis, Ferrari discovered that they had been working against themselves for much of the season. The key was how the SF25 interacted with the rubber. While other teams struggled to keep their compounds within the ideal temperature window, Ferrari had an opposite problem. Its tires entered and left that window erratically, generating variations of half a second per lap for no apparent cause. It was then that the engineering team, with the direct help of the telemetry analysis from Friday and Saturday in Austin, understood that it was not a lack of downforce or a bad strategy, but rather a hidden thermal phenomenon that distorted the car's behavior in variable conditions. Vasseur was the first to confirm it publicly, although cryptically, "We experienced thermal fluctuations, but in the opposite way than the others." That phrase, apparently vague, hid a concrete finding. Ferrari understood that it had to modify how its car distributed heat through the suspension, brakes and aerodynamic flow to stabilize the performance of the tires. It wasn't just a minor adjustment, it was an internal redesign of the technical approach that had governed its first stretch of the season. One of the most crucial elements in this restructuring was the brake-by-wire system, responsible for managing rear braking electronically. Leclerc, who had already been working with his personal engineers on differential adjustments, proposed a specific variation of the BBW to modify the thermal load it generated on the rear tires during heavy braking zones. This modification not only helped prevent stalling, but also stabilized heat transfer to the tires, allowing the SF25 to operate in a more stable window of performance. And this is no minor improvement. In current Formula One, where the difference between pole position and the fourth row can be just 0.3, keeping the tires within their ideal temperature, neither too cold nor overheated, can mean a net gain of several positions in classification and a sustainable race pace. Ferrari had finally found a way to avoid the erratic behavior that had weighed them down from Bahrain to Singapore. The effect of this technical transformation was immediate. In Austin, the car already showed signs of life. But it was in Mexico where Leclerc, with that relentless lap in FP1, demonstrated the extent to which the SF25 had changed its character. Stability in fast sectors, precision in traction, and the ability to maintain pace over long stints spoke of a car that finally felt coherent. And that, in Formula One, is pure gold. The most telling thing is that, while many teams were still struggling with graining on medium compounds, a typical phenomenon at altitude like Mexico City, Ferrari seemed immune. His car not only ran, it ran consistently. And that is never a coincidence. It is the result of deep technical understanding, of pilots who know how to interpret subtle symptoms, and of an engineering core that does not settle for general theories. Ferrari, for the first time in a long time, had managed to anticipate the problem instead of reacting. And that difference is what makes a team that competes, from one that only participates. When Friday's second free practice session began at the Autódromo Hermanos Rodríguez, the atmosphere had already changed. The track, which had been dirty and slippery in FP1, was beginning to show better grip conditions. The starters returned to their cars, the soft compounds entered the scene, and above all, the real competition between the heavyweights on the grid ignited. In this scenario, Max Verstappen came out determined to restore the usual order. He did it with a devastating lap, 1 minute and 17.392 seconds. A direct statement, without embellishments, that placed him at the forefront of the session, but with an important nuance. Because yes, Verstappen was the fastest, but Charles Leclerc was there, just 0.153 seconds behind. A minimal difference in a circuit with low air density, where engine power loses effectiveness and where mechanical grip and aerodynamic load become essential. That narrow margin indicated that Ferrari had not only found stability, but also pure speed. What in previous years would have been absolute dominance by Red Bull in qualifying simulation conditions was now becoming a hand-to-hand battle with Leclerc in top form. At this point, the figure of Lewis Hamilton once again took a backseat. The Briton, although he returned to the car after giving it up in FP1, failed to forcefully insert himself into the fight for the best times. His adaptation to the SF25 was still in progress, and the contrast with Leclerc's ease became increasingly evident. While Hamilton was still adjusting the balance and testing settings to find confidence when braking in the middle corners, Leclerc was already driving with ease, searching for limits, fine-tuning the details. Verstappen's response, however, went beyond a simple fastest lap. During FP2, he also demonstrated alarming consistency in the middle runs, which indicated that Red Bull had solved, at least in part, the balance and traction problems that had been going on since pre-season testing and the Australian GP. Although the RB21 did not dominate with the ease of previous years, Verstappen squeezed it to the limit, exhibiting that unique ability to adapt to the car at hand, regardless of the context. But Red Bull's performance also had a double reading. It was the reflection of a team that cannot afford any more setbacks. After an irregular start to the season and with increasing internal pressure fueled by the early replacement of Liam Lawson and rumors of technical instability, Verstappen seemed to take personal responsibility for keeping Red Bull in the fight. His attack in FP2 was as symbolic as it was necessary. The fascinating thing about this session was not only the Verstappen-Leclerc duel, but the fact that for the first time in months, Ferrari remained close to the Dutchman in all scenarios. Fast lap simulation, long stints, medium pace. It was a clear sign that the gap was beginning to close. And that closeness in Formula One means strategic tension, psychological pressure, and mistakes that begin to matter more. And beyond Ferrari, the world watches. Verstappen has already shown that Red Bull is willing to fight. McLaren continues to push with a car that adapts well to the regulatory evolution, and Mercedes is beginning to regain ground with a duo that combines experience and youth. In the midst of all this, Ferrari cannot afford to waste time on internal conflicts or unresolved hierarchies. The 2025 championship is waiting for no one. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.